Welcome to an I Exist podcast. Our entire mission can be summed up in one phrase: becoming all that we are. It is our belief that fulfillment doesn't come from changing into things you aren't, but rather from becoming everything that you already are. And ultimately, we're here to press and empower you to lead lives that are full of fulfillment. We've dedicated this specific podcast to the dream. Not to having the dream or even talking about the dream, but to living the dream. The reality is that there's a stark difference between having a dream and manifesting one. Here you'll gain insight and wisdom keys directly from some of the water walkers of our generation, dream practitioners, those who have decided to tread paths where there were none, to step out into only what they could see. Come take a peek into the minds of some who, from within, create our world's most magnificent realities. I'm the creator and host, Bryan Pharr, and this is the Living the Dream podcast. All right, hey, welcome to the 8th episode of Living the Dream, the podcast. I am your host, Bryan Pharr, and as always, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I want to say, if you have not listened to all of the podcasts, there is some very valuable information on each and every one of those. And so if you could take a listen and even maybe read the descriptions and see if it's something that you would be into in general. But regardless of the topic and the subject matter, every single one of them, I guarantee you, has more than enough information that you could use in your daily life. And so I just encourage you to kind of go back. So today I'm going to go into something that is, I know that maybe all of the podcasts I do somewhat have maybe a serious tone to them. You know, they're not exactly comedy, so they're more serious. But today it'll probably take a little bit even different turn in that some of the subject matter will be a little bit more heavy. But again, I encourage you to stay all the way through. It's going to be a lot of good information I know that will come from this. So I do have a guest today with me. And this person, by all measurements, by all calculations, I believe could be considered a literal brother of mine. And I say that because, I was talking to him the other day and I told him that from the level of care, maybe not how much I've had a lot of quote unquote meaningful conversation or advice and counsel from this person, but just from the level of care I've seen come from this guy's mother. And I don't call a lot of people mother. I'm not the type of person that's calling everybody mom and dad or anything like that, but I would definitely consider his mom a mother to me, just because of the level of care that I've seen come from her over the years toward me. And in the same breath, I say that I was actually talking to my mom and she was showing concern for, again, I'll say my brother. And the way that she literally quoted him in conversation is, that's my son, I care. And so, again, by all measurements, by all intangible measurements, not only that, we've been friends since, I believe, anywhere between 3rd and 5th grade. He'd probably say 3rd. I normally would probably quote 5th grade. He may be more accurate with that. So we'll just go with 3rd. All probably large moments in life I can look at and say I've probably had some type of conversation around it. It's been a common exchange between the both of us for, I feel like, being there for each other in certain different ways, in the way that we best could for each other. And it was the guy standing beside me at my wedding. His daughter is someone who authentically feels like a niece to me. Just all of that. So by every intangible measurement, this feels more like a brother to me than anything else. But at the same time, by societal measurements, I would be considered a black male and he would be considered a white male. And so now, to put a different lens on it, even when I was saying his mother felt like my mother, it's literally just putting the term a brother from another mother on full display is the way I kind of see it. And so, again, by all societal measurements, we come from quote unquote different backgrounds and cultures, again, by societal measurements, which are more outwardly measuring tangible things. But again, the reason I wanted to invite him on is because it struck me that I wanted to have a conversation around a lot of the dealings and a lot of the things that are happening currently, concerning the whole George Floyd murdering. And to be really honest with you guys, I almost had gotten to the point to where I said, I'm not going to say anything about it And I'm a writer. And so in times past, I have written down a lot of information of what I would say had I been on any platform, probably at the time, anybody else's platform concerning this subject matter. But, I felt like I would be doing somewhat of an injustice if now when I have my own platform to speak from, that I didn't actually say some of the things that have maybe been on my heart for a long time. And I didn't feel like there was a more perfect person to talk to about these things. There's a lot of other factors that I didn't even include. We came up through school together. I think that it was probably the closest to a school that I've ever even seen or heard of, in which I think there were almost majority Black students almost throughout our entire schooling together, right? And so he's had that experience. On top of that, I didn't mention this also, that his own daughter would be considered mixed race, right? Again, by the societal terming of it. And so, again, I didn't know of a more perfect person to talk to about this subject matter and to kind of give you his view on things. It's not anything that's implanted. To be honest with you, I've never just asked him like, hey, man, what do you think about Black people? And of course, we've talked about race before, but that hasn't been necessarily the questioning or the subject matter that's just at the forefront of any conversation that eventually did go into race. And so I needed to invite someone in that I know could be close enough to the experience to be able to have a valid voice, and also someone that I could even relate to. And so, again, I didn't know of a more perfect person. So this person is Dane Martin. So first of all, let's welcome him onto the show. And I've already divulged a lot of information about you intentionally. But if there's anything you want to add about yourself, go ahead and introduce yourself. And I'll say this, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. I've spent enough time talking about our background, particularly as far as, some of the things that qualify you, I feel like, for even having this conversation with. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and then maybe even go into some of your experience, all of the things that I mentioned from your lens.
Okay, thank you for having me on, Brian. I appreciate you asking me to be a part of this conversation. Yeah, again, my name's Dane Martin. Brian and I have been friends for a really long time, and seen a lot of things, been a part of a lot of things with different friends along the years. Just my experience, like being able to hang out with my Black friends and noticing the way that society treats them and how they are affected by many different aspects, whether it's from, the way teachers talk to them to the way, they're treated when they walk into a store. Many different things come into play here. There is a privilege that's given to you as a white person, just being honest, that you get the benefit of the doubt as to where most Black people do not. That's my experience.
Wow.
In a lot of these situations where I've been hanging out with my friends and witnessed things and seen different things happen. I mean, would you say probably so, Brian, that white people get the benefit of the doubt and Black people do not? And this is not like a white people bashing moment, but this is just a conversation right now. What do you think about that?
So yeah, what I'll say is that I think that you've termed it almost perfectly to what my experience would say or denote, which is that the perfect way to coin it is the benefit of the doubt in almost every situation I've seen, and I just think it's an interesting way to even say it, but I think that's primarily, again, the best way to describe it. And let me double back and say, part of the reason I did want to bring Dane on is because in no way, at no point do I or did I feel it necessary to bash an entire culture or societal classification of a people group. Out of all of the systematic racism I felt personally and seen in the world, I'll say this out loud, but, maybe Dane can speak to this too. From my perspective, it has not ever affected my relationship with Dane in terms of I haven't gone and then told him all white people are evil. That hasn't been my presentation to him. And I don't think that's ever been the way I've treated him. And so, of course, none of this podcast is going to be about bashing an entire people group. But I do think that's just a perfect way to sum it up, is that it is a benefit of doubt that is preferential to white Americans. And like I said, we're jumping straight into it, so I might as well go ahead and hit certain things pretty hard. And I have my own twist to certain definitions. I'm not saying that my definition is going to align with the exact definition that's in the dictionary, but I will say this. For myself, I've always said I would rather be stupid than to be ignorant, right? Now, personally, I will not tolerate being either. Like, that's not my standard for living. I don't want to be stupid or be ignorant. But if I had to choose between the two, I would rather be stupid. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in my personal definition of the two words, one indicates that you can't do better if you don't know better, right? So that's to me like stupidity. All right. You just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Right. Ignorance has a big word in it that I think people often ignore. And that word is ignore. Right. And so when I look at that word, it's like the continuance of ignoring. Right. And so ignorance is just that to me. Right. And so I think that when it comes down to racism and preferential treatment of your own race, I think that some of it comes from ignorance, right? A lot of it comes from stupidity, right? Because if I don't spend a lot of time with any other cultures or any other people groups or any other nationalities or ethnicities, I'm just going to be stupid about a lot of things, right? And if I choose to believe, some negative report that I see in the news or heard from a group of people who just had one experience with one person from that people group, then, I still don't know what I just don't know. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of preferential treatment and things like that just comes from proximity. Normally, with most people, the way most of us act, you're probably going to treat your friend in a kinder way than you do somebody you don't know, right? So the proximity thing is an issue in and of itself. And so again, if I don't know any black people as a white person, if I don't ever hang out with any, of course, my treatment is going to be preferential to those I actually know. I can't even say that I could consider that a racism issue. That's just a human issue, right? That's just kind of the way it goes, right? But at the same time, I think using that word ignorance too, there comes a point to where you have ignored a lot of opportunities to get to know somebody. You have ignored a lot of actual real facts about maybe another people group. Ignorance is a bigger thing, right? Because it's saying that I'm choosing to ignore certain things to continue preferential treatment, right? And I'm going to tell you how this is really played out. To me, when you're talking about giving the benefit of doubt, I'm really ignoring not how other people groups are. I'm actually ignoring the reality of my own people group, right? And so what I feel like is, I think somebody quoted that it's much better for you to be considered real than to be considered always right, right? And so what that means is being real is I'm dealing with my situation as it is, right? I see it like this, and this is a part of ignorance too, and maybe even human adjustment. And I know I might be getting psychological and stuff, but this is just how I think. After a while, if you sit in your own mess for too long, or if you are a person that works with waste management, if I do that every day, after a while, the smell is not the same anymore, right? I can start to tolerate it more and more until eventually, or you work at some stinking factory or something like that, or you work with manure or just something that would be from an outside person considered horrible, because I don't know how you stay in that environment is probably how it would be said from the outside in. But again, the more you stay in it, you get used to it. And so you don't even see it anymore. You don't even smell it anymore, right? It actually just reminds me of some commercial I probably saw not too long ago in which they're talking about your garbage, right, in your house. And, somebody else comes over your house that's never been there and they're like, God, it stinks in here. But like, because the garbage has been sitting in your trash can for a considerable amount of time or for a couple days, you don't even smell it anymore. And so it's the same type of situation. I think that a lot of the ignorance that I'm talking about is not necessarily pointed towards just there's good factors about a people group that I'm ignoring, right? But it's also that I'm ignoring the problems of my own people group. You get what I'm saying? And so I'm giving preferential treatment that's not based upon an actual reality. It's because when I'm a part of a problem, or when I'm sitting in a problem for so long, or sitting in my own stink for so long, I don't even smell it anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm ignoring the fact that it stinks anymore. Anytime these situations arise, again, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt because I'm no longer conscious of, the fact that what this is wrong. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think about the idea that every man justifies what he does in his own heart, right? And so when you think about that, you can do wrong. You know what I'm saying? We used to be in church a good bit growing up and things like that. after a while, I started realizing that when people told the story of David and Goliath, for instance, right? Or if they told the story of Israel overcoming some nation and God blessing them, I started to realize that everybody that heard the story was Israel. Everybody that heard the story was David, as if there's no Goliaths in this world, as if there's no whatever evil character you can think of. Another example I think of is if you sit in front of a bunch of people and normally you say, all right, how many people in here have haters, right? Everybody throws their hands up. I got a hater. I know somebody that's jealous of me right now. But if you say, how many of you are a hater? No hands. You understand what I'm saying? Because sometimes you can sit in your own stink so long that you don't realize you are specifically towards this subject matter. You are the one perpetuating the problem. You know what I mean? And I think that these moments in history become what hopefully jolt the system to wake up and smell. Really, the angle that I'm coming at this from is that, listen, me as a black male speaking is saying everything ain't about being right, right? Because preferential treatment can come through the idea of people just trying to be right. So anything like this that happens, when I'm defensive, I immediately go into, well, what does the law say, right? What gave him permission to do XYZ, or what gave them permission to do XYZ, right? And instead of taking a more real approach to say, well, you know what? It's not everybody, but I do know some people that are racist. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying even in my own people group, it's not everybody, but I do know that there's a lot of people who felt comfortable saying some lewd things, some ignorant things about an entire people group. It's not everybody, but my problem is, where's the admission of the stink that's in your own home? You understand what I'm saying? Where is the admission? It's just almost like the all lives matter argument that comes up. It's out of a defensiveness, because I don't think anybody literally just wants to put on a bunch of guilt, and which is why I'm not approaching this from the standpoint of people bashing, right? Of no race. I'm not white people bashing through this in general. But what I'm saying is, where's the admission that there is wrong in my own house? It's almost the idea of, how can you talk to me about the splinter that's in my eye when you have a plank in yours? The idea of that statement is that, where is the admission of the stink in your own house? You know what I'm saying? And I think that that is what would help the situation, because there's so much of a pervasive, fight to be right in every situation, to defend, to say, it's not me personally. You know what I mean? It's not my mother. My mother didn't raise me that way and all this other stuff, but it still denies the fact that people of your own color, of your own race, of your own, whatever societal classification it's been given, that are just outright crazy. You know them. You know people that are racist. You've come in contact with people who are this way. Where is the admission of that? You understand what I'm saying? That doesn't make you necessarily guilty. It actually makes you more humane than people who are ignoring that fact or not acknowledging that fact. You know what I'm saying? And again, I think it would help, honestly, the narrative of any white person in every situation, if you're just not only saying, okay, it's not me personally, but again, a part of the spreading of the problem is the lack of admission, that you do understand that there's a lot of things in your system that does stink. Because, what's real about it is that no people group is perfect, or no person is perfect, right? That's an obvious statement. But I think in times like this, again, what connects people are those type of admissions, right? That I do admit that not everybody's perfect. And I don't want to talk this entire time. So yeah, that's what I think. I think that there is preferential treatment. I think there is a benefit of doubt given. So what's your angle on that too, even after I said all of that?
Writer, producer, artist, coach, and inspirational motivational speaker, Bryan Pharr takes us on a deep, retrospective, and introspective journey ranging from his childhood until life today that invokes the question, will I live a life of significance or one of safety? Filled with experience-gained wisdom and revelatory insights, A New Home dares its readers to ask themselves the hard questions concerning their need to fit in. How far will you go? And will all the efforts you've made be worth it in the end? This perspective-shifting discourse is a must-read, and through its hard-hitting yet relatable, tear-jerking, and even at points comical nature, may prove to be more of a life-changing event than just a good Sunday morning read. Get your physical copy or digital copy today at Amazon.com.
going back, I know you were talking about definitions and stuff like that earlier. I Googled the word empathy, and just a quick definition. It says the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes for a moment can really, hopefully, change your perspective on a lot of things and the way that people are treated and the way you treat other people, man. I mean, it sounds something so easy, but so many people ignore it. And, as you were talking about earlier, like admission, and also starting with, along with that, like empathy as well. Like, man, it's just witnessing and seeing all the terrible, what happened this past week, man. It's been heartbreaking and devastating. And I just think maybe, the admission part, the showing empathy to other people, like your fellow human being from an inward start. And then maybe even let that develop into, in the language that we speak. Growing up, you hear people described in different ways. Like, hey, man, that black guy over there or that white guy over there. They're using that in a descriptive way. But if they were talking about someone on their own race, they would only say, hey, that guy over there. But why don't we start from a place of this person's a human being first? So let me say, hey,
sure,
everyone, black or white, Latino, hey, this gentleman over here or this guy, like, let's take away the descriptive color portion of it and look at them from the start as a human being. Like, they have value, they have a precious life. And I think that that's starting from an inward approach to even changing our language on how we talk about one another. Like, the description of someone, sometimes I feel like it's not necessary because it immediately separates us rather than unifying us. And I feel like that's a big issue in our language, the way we think, like I was talking about empathy. And that's just kind of some thoughts, man, that I have right now that I've, just experiencing over the years in life so far.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where my thoughts are right now, so.
Yeah, and I'll even add this to what you're saying. Like, on a deeper level, it not only separates, right? I'll say this much. For me personally, I don't have a problem with descriptions that are accurate. If my skin is obviously, a different tone of skin than yours, I don't have a problem with somebody pointing that out. I don't have a problem with the fact that we're all different in some type of way. Even every single person, even every single white person, even every single, as you say, Latino person or Asian person. It's almost an insult. And I know that our Asian brothers and sisters hate it to be said that they all look alike, or black people all look alike, or you know what I'm saying? Like, those type of things are almost, it's ignorance. But I don't have a problem naming distinctions between people. I think the problem is that when you do say this was a white male, I think even what you're feeling, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, deeper than the way you presented it, may be the idea that it's not that you're being separated, it's that you're being sentenced when somebody says that. You get what I'm saying? So there's a natural, two things happen, right? Sometimes just a reality gets presented that might rub you the wrong way. Because let's go back to what I was saying before. To be honest with you, this is the crazy thing about life. So I understand exactly what you're saying on one side of it. Because it's wrong for you to say, hey, a black guy came over my house, and what comes to your mind literally is an impoverished person, right? If I was listening to that and I said, oh, somebody broke came to your house just because you used the description black, then that's obviously wrong and ignorant, right? So let's take that same conversation over here and say that as a minority people group, there is a high amount of poor people in this people group, right? It's almost like in that sense, it's okay to classify a lot of people within the people group as poor, but then you have to have the maturity on the flip side of it to think to yourself, and you have to not be ignorant to the fact that just because that may be a factor that's real about a people group, that doesn't mean that if I say a black person came to my house, that means an ignorant poor person came to my house. If I said to you that a white person came to my house, and the first picture that comes to you is some mass murderer, you know what I'm saying? Like, in the same way that people are locking doors if I walk past their car because of whatever stereotypes come to their mind. And this is just real stuff. And I'm not going to skip over any reality in this conversation. Again, and this is another reason I'm talking to my brother, because it can get as real as it can get. and this is a stupid example, it's a funny example, but this is how people think, I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. If I'm more hesitant to eat a white person's food because I'm like, man, this is gonna be not seasoned or whatever the situation, the white person out there that does season their food really well and might outcook a lot of black people, you know what I'm saying? When it comes down to real taste, flavor, and the execution of their meal, is going to be offended, right? Because there's always exceptions. But at the same time, somebody might say, hey, well, I'm a black person. My experience has been in a white community, and I went to a majority white school, and I had a lot of friends, and, their food didn't just taste like my grandmother's, you know what I'm saying? And it might be some factual element to it. And so it's a weird thing, man, but it's almost a push and pull that we have in life. So I don't necessarily think it's wrong, but I get what you're saying. I think when the intention is to say a white guy came over my house to sentence them before anything else, I think that you have sometimes acted ignorantly in doing so, right? So here's the perfect example. When you see the lady that was in, what was it, Central Park? I think it was, the black guy tells her he's concerned about her dog being choked. So he asked her to put the leash onto the dog collar, and she literally goes crazy, and the woman could have been on drugs. You never know what state of mind she was in or whatever, or she just was a stupid, mean lady, right? She calls the police and she says, there's an African American man attempting to do XYZ. He's attempting to do XYZ to me. It's an African American man, right? I think I heard somebody say to me that, they were on social media and they saw that somebody who was commenting about it, they were like, well, there's just people who are crazy out here, as if to divert the conversation from a race conversation, right? So there's just really crazy people out here, that. But my thing is, okay, yeah, that's a really crazy person regardless. But the fact that she tried to sentence him on the phone by saying this is an African American male, right? She knew she had benefit of doubt in the situation immediately. And she felt like that because of the way she's seen preferential treatment of her own people group and a very wrong treatment many times in the other direction, the way that you've preferred to view the black male, for instance, in an evil way, automatically, because what comes to your mind is thug and whatever other word or whatever other description, then she's trying to use that power. You get what I'm saying? And so I do believe, and I think that's what you're referring to, I do believe that when you use it in that type of way, you're not just doing it to separate, you're doing it to sentence somebody before anything else, before any consideration. You're using the benefit of doubt, you're using the preferential treatment, you're using all of that stuff to your advantage. And so that's even how I'm seeing what you were saying. Would that be accurate?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I do believe so. I do believe so, man.
So yeah, just to take a turn here really quickly, there's certain things I didn't mention that I know that you could speak to. So let me just give you an example. First of all, another reason, I said that I would consider his mother a mother to me in certain ways. I'll never forget, she took us to, what was it, Tennessee?
Yes.
I think the intention was to go to Dollywood or something like that at the time and kind of around in that area. But, again, another reason that made you a good person to even speak to was the fact that even then, I literally remember a time we tried to go out to the pool when we were at the hotel or wherever we were staying. And literally, I saw white people coming to get their kids out of the pool because I got in the pool with Dane at the time. Yeah. And like the whole pool emptied all of a sudden when we went out there. And I'm like, I don't even think it was nighttime or anything. This was like, I don't remember what time it was, but
was daylight.
Yeah,
it was daylight.
It was still daylight. I mean, the pool empty. I remember walking on the strip with you and people started pulling stuff inside their stores. It was just crazy, right? And so I remember even going to, I don't know if you were with me, but you remember we used to go to that store called Sunstop because it had all of the anime movies that we were into, right? And I remember going to Sunstop, and literally by this time I was old enough to really understand a lot of preferential treatment and racism and things like that, or bias, I can say. And I remember literally playing with one of the employees by walking back and forward from different aisles because I knew they were following me around the store. And so I'd spend 2 seconds on one aisle and then run to the next aisle, and they would literally follow me every single time, right? It was just like following me around the store type of situation. I only brought that up because I don't know if you were with me at that time or if I was either by myself or with someone else. But so I don't know if you can even give voice to that. But let me ask you this. What has your personal experience been with the Black community, and what can you speak to the reality of what Black people are saying about how they're treated, maybe more in depth than you've already said, about the way that they're being treated? And then even you, again, having a daughter that you may have to consider certain things with, or think differently about, you know what I'm saying, about her going into the world and things like that. What's been your personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, starting with your last question first, like concerning my daughter, to be honest with you, I haven't had that conversation with her because she is mixed. It needs to happen soon. But just trying to gather the words to talk to her about, hey, like, this is maybe some things you may can expect. This is what I've seen happen to my Black friends that are terrible things. And the reality of being Black, what I've seen is that it's just so many people, like, they automatically have a fear of Black people. Like, they just start off being afraid.
Wow.
And it's just crazy. Like, I don't understand. I mean, like I said earlier, it's not about bashing white people in this instance, but, like, I just don't understand the fear aspect. Like, and it's just hard to grasp. And I'm just trying to find the words right now.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy, man. I mean, like I said, I witnessed a lot of stuff. I've heard a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff, man. And it's just trying to convey all that to her to understand, hey, you will be looked at differently and treated differently because, you are mixed. And it's just the reality. Like I said, I wish it could be, like I said, empathy. Everybody putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I started from that place, but let's just be real. I mean, people are stupid. Like they just don't think. Like they are ignorant, and it's just sad, man. Like when a couple friends of mine that you and I would hang out with when we were younger, maybe 6th or 7th grade, man. Like we were just walking down their development road, right? Really nice development. They live there, along with everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So we're walking down the road, and these two little kids who are younger than us ride their bikes by us and spit on one of my friends who is Black.
Wow.
And so he was trying to pedal as fast as he could to get away after spitting on him. Well, like I said, my friend, put on the speed and, Usain Bolt and called him. And just pushed him down, honestly.
Wow.
And could have destroyed him. But that's what he stopped at. And this little boy, he had to be taught that. Like, he had to be taught that hate.
Yeah.
From someone, most likely his parents.
Yeah.
And it's just like the issue, man, it's just there. And that same guy, I've been walking with him before, and someone has thrown a beer bottle out of their truck.
Wow.
And called him the N-word, trying to hit him with that beer bottle.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. And these are just a couple instances. Like I said, it's not about bashing people, but this is the reality of things. And it's a very scary situation. You ask a bunch of people, hey, would you want to be a Black man right now, or a black woman? If you ask a white person that, I mean, they would probably say no. And that's the issue.
Yeah.
It's so unequal, the justice system. It's so unequal the way that people are treated. It's just crazy, man. And yeah, that's just a snippet, but it's just so much, man. It's a really heavy issue. But I hope that kind of gives some insight and a little bit of the perspective that I've had and the situations and stuff that's happened. So
I have two questions after that. I've brought up example where you've been with me and you've been with our friends, other friends who are black, and kind of had this, you've seen firsthand. But also, I think even in another way, you can probably give testament to the fact that because you are white, you've actually told me before, like, of being around, white people who, of course, were comfortable around you, who may not have said this in the presence of, maybe if I was there or, some of your other friends, but how it was so latent in some of those situations that when you came, it kind of came out of them and they were using maybe slurs and stuff like that. So, like, to what extent do you feel like you've experienced racism without the presence of a black person?
Okay, yeah, I mean, situation where, very specific. I was on my job or whatever, and this guy came up to me, and like I said, he felt comfortable enough to talk to me, honestly, like, because he was white. I guess he thought that I'm going to share the same opinion. Oh, you're white, like I said, not to get political, it's like, oh, a gun-toting, Trump-loving son of a gun.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, and like I said, that not all people are encompassed that lane or whatever, that
Right.
alley, but still, like, you felt comfortable enough with, hey, he just described black people with the N-word. And I'm like, dude, like, it's just, you feel comfortable saying that to me. Like, why?
Right.
Like, it's just totally unacceptable, man. Like, and it's really crazy that they just feel like people just, had a couple of those experiences. That one has happened most recently.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I don't know, man. It's just like just the experience of that. And like, are you walking around calling this to their face? Like, it's not like to start trouble or anything, but like, man, like, what is your issue? Like, what is your fear? Like, are you fear that, you're afraid they're going to take something from you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the deal that just gets people stuck on this cycle of hate? And you know what I mean? I don't know. It's just crazy.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I appreciate you for saying this stuff, man. I think that, we're friends. I obviously appreciate anybody who's willing enough to lift their voice as a person who's just being real and empathetic. I think that something you said earlier, which is, you looked up the word empathy and, defined it and things like that, and being able to step into someone else's shoes. I think for me that's exactly what I'm saying about being real, right? Empathy is about being real. It's not about being right? Because you can bend any rule to your favor, right? When you look at this situation concerning George Floyd, there's nothing to me real about anybody saying that guy should not be in jail because of whatever law that you are bending in your favor. Justice doesn't come from a law to me, right? Because there's still people who are wielding the law, right? And until you have a perfect person wielding a law, a quote unquote perfect law, then I think no perfect justice can come out of it, because the person that's wielding the law is not perfect, right? And so now you're going to steal with your own heart, with your own deceptiveness, with your own ignorance, with your own bad perceptions, with your own preferential treatment, or whatever the situation is. You're going to bend it in your favor. You're going to find ways, you're going to find loopholes. You're going to do so. The law cannot be perfect when wielded by imperfect people. So you just got done listening to Until We're All Free, Part 1, a very candid conversation between two men on race in America. First of all, I want to say that our condolences are with every family that has suffered from the injustice of racism, inequality of any form, no matter who you are, whatever race. Our hearts go out to those of the minority who still may be suffering from family separation, all of the recent, clearly unjust police killings, the many cases we don't even know about or see, false imprisonments, just every case. Our condolences are with you and your families, and we'll do whatever we can to continue to fan the flame of peace and hope and promise for all. So we thank you for tuning in today. I also want to say that this will remain a platform in which everyone is able to speak their truth and the truth, but not all views and opinions may necessarily reflect those of I Exist itself. And so just keep that in mind as we're all listening. Thank you again for listening. As always, I pray that your way be made prosperous. And until next time.